Dear YouTube, hi again. So I decided that tonight we're going to make grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup because that's something else that I know how to make. We did shrimp fried rice, which I didn't know how to make. So we're getting towards, new things. If you've never made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, then this will be an exciting experience back into maybe possibly what your parents made for you when you were a kid. Like, that's what this reminds me of, is my mom. So because of the whole time allowance thing, I've already started cooking the soup, and that included something where I put a can of the tomato soup mix into the pot, and then I put a can of milk because it makes it creamier. And tonight I discovered that it says that on the back of the can, which I never read the back of the can. So if you're out there and you're like, holy crap, that's how Mom's tomato soup was so much better than when I tried to make it myself, or if you're like me and don't read labels until you're 32, that's how you do that, is you add a can of milk, which I thought was my mom's secret, but apparently everyone knows it. So can of soup and a can of milk equals creamy soup. So the next thing that many people look over, which can lead to bad things, is that bread can't actually be cooked. I mean, it can, but it will probably get burnt if you cook it without putting something on it. And you can put things in the skillet. I'm sure that there's lots of people out there who will protest and say you can cook. But we're not talking about all the 100 ways to make grilled cheese sandwiches. We're talking about the way that I make grilled cheese sandwiches. And so what I do is I have softened butter, so it's softer than, it's at room temperature or better. And then I put that butter, and it's best, the softer it is the better, because then you don't tear the bread. You put that butter on the back of the bread, and you attempt to basically, you're creating a layer of fat between the bread and the skillet. When you do this, you want to have an acceptable amount, and you want to have your cheese ready before you put your bread on the skillet, because it's those moments that the cheese is going to melt, or the moments that you first drop it on there and it heats up for a little bit, and then you have to flip it before it burns. So you want to make sure you want to try your best, just try your best, to time it so that the cheese melts at the same rate that the butter melts, especially if you throw it on the ground. It's a good thing it landed butter side up, and I clean my floors incessantly, so I'm going to eat it anyway. So, yeah, there's nothing on there. That's awesome. So you want your skillet to be warm before you put your bread on it, and you're going to want to make sure you butter both pieces of bread. And the reason that is that the butter from the first half will literally cook into the first half. It's not going to leave a lot of residual, oil for the second half of the bread to absorb. And then if you don't butter both sides, then one side will be really, really greasy and the other side will be burnt. So I'm going to butter them both as evenly as you can, and just try to keep an even layer of of the butter across the entire piece. And then when you think your skillet is warm enough, which ours is about there, then you put your bread on, you put your cheese on, you put your other side, and that's butter side down, and then this side butter side up, obviously, because that's how you would make sure it was between the pieces, and then you let it cook. And there's a neat way to tell if it's cooked, and it's by how it sounds, but since I can't really tell you how it sounds, and I can't imagine that this video is actually going to sound the right sound at the right time, I can only tell you that practice makes perfect, and you're going to get better and better at it as time goes on, so don't panic. So also, when you put in that can of tomato soup and the milk, you do have to stir it. So stirring is important, because otherwise it can burn and then it smells weird. And you're cooking the soup on like a medium-high heat, and you're cooking the grilled cheese on a medium heat. And if you start moving it around about now, I don't know how long it's been, but maybe 10 seconds, you can start to see the butter is melting. And but it just, you don't flip it over yet. If you flip it over too soon, you have a soggy sandwich that's very salty. So you have to be sure that you are patient with your thing. So it's cooking. And while I was at the grocery store tonight, it occurred to me that when I read a book, especially if it's like a book with an idea in it, that I often will like read the book, and because it's a book, I don't necessarily absorb the idea the same way as I would if someone told me about it. And so I was thinking about this whole like, what is this and how do I eat it, in concept to the idea of knowledge, is how do we make ourselves ready for information, and how do we receive information the best way. And I started to think about what ideas in my life I have absorbed like appropriately, or absorbed and I actually like got something out of. And it occurs to me that a lot of those ideas are the most easy to manage at the time that they are most appropriate, which I know that sounds weird and kind of obscure, but basically, like, I read The Tao of Pooh, which is a great book, when I was like 19 in high school, because I went to an alternative high school and it was required reading to read this book. And I took this class and I read this book, and I learned all these facts, and I learned all these concepts about Taoism and the understanding that like things are what they are, and you just like let things be. But recently, as in like in the last couple weeks, especially in the last 6 months, I've been understanding this concept of life without expectations, like life where I just say it's okay that I'm not doing this societal thing. It's okay that I'm not that I'm not like other people. It's okay that I'm just like here, and that I'm experiencing this life, not complicating things. And then I reread this book like in the last few days. I've been rereading it, and I haven't read it in so long that I was kind of blown away by rereading it and hearing it. And I've heard all the things before, and I remember hearing them, and they were good things at that time, and they are good things now, but I didn't really understand them the first time I read it in the way that I understand them now. And then that makes me think, I wonder how many things I won't understand now, or that I think I understand now that I won't understand later, or that I'll look back and be like, wow, that was so stupid, why didn't I understand that? And I know that everyone's had this thought, so, and I know everyone's had every thought, so there's nothing that I can say that's new. But if you were watching a video about making grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, the odds are pretty good that you may have had an experience like I'm talking about, or you might not have had it, and me saying this is gobbledygook that you'll never understand, because you can't understand it until you know the concept. But basically, that there's no rush. That was a lot. That there's no rush to knowledge. There's no need to reach out for the next answer, because it'll just come when it's supposed to. And so I was thinking about that in context of this video. And first of all, I was thinking, why am I making YouTube videos about understanding how to make food, or whatever, because it's the same concept as like, I understand something and I'm telling you how I understand it, and you should understand it too, and I can explain it to you. And the same thing is true for philosophy. The same thing is true for, ideas and concepts. Like, we get excited about understanding something, we want to tell someone else, and then we panic about the outcome, or we want them to know more, or we want to explain something, a little better, and all of it's pointless. Like, they're going to figure it out whether you tell them or not. And that's like, it's a new thing for me, because I'm writing my book with the intention of helping people to understand life. Like, just like when you lose your driver's license, these are the 3 things you need at the DMV. It's a really simple thing, but like, the day you lose your wallet, you don't think about the fact that you have to have those things to go to the DMV to get your ID replaced. So you go to the DMV without them, and then you find out that there's a list, and then you go back, and then you find those things, then you come back and you're at the DMV the second time. And some people, you even go back a third time because then there's still one more thing you didn't have, or you didn't have your glasses when it was time to eye test or whatever. And these are things that these are frustrations we all experience, and yet each of us learns something unique from those experiences. And so my idea with the book was, well, why don't I write a book and explain to people how, tell people, hey, when you lose your driver's license, don't forget to bring, proof of address, or don't forget to call your DMV in advance before you go and like check it out. Then I was like, well, but I had an experience while I was walking back to my car from the DMV the third time or whatever, and I ran into some person, and that person was like the most important person I could have run into, and gave me a job and changed my life and whatever. So here I am wanting to write this book, trying to take the frustration out of an aspect of life, like when you lose your wallet. And really what I'm doing is I'm removing a variable of randomness that would have happened to you, and therefore changing your outlook on that specific instance made it easier to go to the DMV, but then you didn't meet the love of your life on the street corner the third time you went, because he wouldn't have been there the first day or whatever. And I understand that that's an idea that a million people have had before, and that me having it for the first time isn't unique either. And then I'm like, well, then why am I, and I go right back to why am I making YouTube videos about, food? And it's like, if I figured it out and I'm here to tell you, then like, you're gonna figure it out too, anyway. So this is the first half of the grilled cheese sandwich. And the idea is that you want it to be this golden brown. And I don't know if you can see, there's no burn at all. It's totally golden brown. And you'll get used to the smell too, because I smelled it. That's how I know that it happened. Anyway, then you flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. And by this time, the cheese is melted. And if you avoid pushing it into the sides of the pan, then you won't lose cheese in the sides of the pan. The soup is getting really close to being done. And so in fact, it is done. So I'm gonna reduce that heat to like low, between low and medium low, pretty low. Anyway, so this is a grilled cheese sandwich. And you're gonna cook it on both sides about the same amount of time. You can kind of drag it around and you can see how much butter is still under it because it'll like rub off on the bottom of the pan. And personally, even though I know there's already a lot of milk involved, when I eat grilled cheese and tomato soup, I like to have it with a glass of milk. Or in this case, tonight, with fresh juiced orange juice, which I just made in my own juicer, which I've had this juicer for God knows how long I've had this juicer. But I finally was like, why do I have this juicer? I'm not using it. And so I put it in the sale pile. And then it stayed in the sale pile for like a month because I haven't had time to sell anything that I put in the sale pile. And then a client gave me a bunch of oranges and tangerines for because they got too many for Christmas, and so they were freaking out and figuring out, who to give them to before they went bad. So I just juiced them. And as it turns out, this is probably the best tasting orange juice I think I've ever had in my life. And I know people always say that, but like, this is really good. And it's not bitter like the stuff at the store. Like, I don't like orange juice from the store. I don't know why. I like apple juice, but not orange juice. It's just it's too done. It's too far gone. So this is me saying oranges are great in the juicer. So the second side always cooks a little faster than the first side, and that's because the skillet is warmer by the second round, like it's a little hotter than usual, so you don't want to cook it for as long. If you were timing it, then don't time it because it's a bad idea. So here you have it, grilled cheese and tomato soup. It comes out looking nice and toasty brown. And the tomato soup it'll have a little froth on the top, but that's totally normal. Just stir it in and enjoy yourself. So yeah, and read books, especially The Dad Approves, a great book. Thanks so much, YouTube. Have a great night.